Welcome to Conversations from St. Norbert College, a program that invites you into discussions taking place in your community on today's local and global issues. Now, your host for Conversations from St. Norbert College, the Dean and Academic Vice President of the college, Michael Marsden.
Good evening. My name is Michael Marsden, and I'm your host for this edition of Conversations from St. Norbert College. Our very special guest this evening is Bishop David Ricken, Bishop of the Catholic Diocese of Green Bay. And our topic this evening is the Bishop's agenda for the Green Bay Diocese over the next few years. Bishop Ricken was ordained a priest on September 12, 1980, by Bishop of the Pueblo Diocese, Arthur Latoya, at the Catholic parish there in southeast Colorado. His first appointment was as the associate pastor to the Cathedral of the Sacred Heart in Pueblo. And in 1987, Reverend Ricken attended the Pontifical Gregorian University in Rome, where he received his licentiate degree in canon law in 1989. On October 1st of 1996, he was nominated as an official of the Congregation of the Clergy at the Vatican, where he served through December of 1999. On September 26th of 2001, Bishop Ricken succeeded Bishop Joseph Hart as the seventh leader of the Diocese of Cheyenne, Wyoming. And on July 9th, 2008, Pope Benedict XVI named Bishop Ricken the 12th Bishop of the Diocese of Green Bay, and he was installed as the bishop on August 28th of 2008 at St. Francis Xavier Cathedral here in Green Bay. Bishop, welcome to our program. We're really pleased to have you with us.
Mike.
It's nice to have you here. I hope
Pleasure to be with you.
I hope your first 7 months so far have really been welcoming and hopeful.
Oh, it's been a wonderful experience, Doctor, and just getting to meet the people of the diocese and the priests and the religious and to see all the parishes. I haven't been to all of them, but to quite a few of them, and the Catholic schools and the Catholic high school, Catholic hospitals. It's just been a great introduction, and people have been very warm and welcoming.
Well, that's really good
very
to hear.
Grateful, very grateful.
And as you look forward now to your first few years here as the bishop, and we hope it'll be many years.
I hope so.
We hope. What are some of your major goals for the diocese? Because I'm sure you've got many agenda items out there, but some are more important than others. What would you set as your maybe 3 to 5 top goals for the diocese?
Yeah, well, I would say my first goal has been to really be here, to arrive and to get to know the people and to really listen to what's on the people's hearts and what the priests are thinking and what they're feeling, where they'd like to see the diocese go. So in a few months, we'll be doing some sort of pastoral planning process where we involve the priests and the religious and the lay faithful to kind of set the agendas for the next few years. I don't want to come and just impose my ideas. There's so much that's so impressive. I'd like to build on what has been, and maybe to emphasize a little bit more the numbers of seminarians and to really recruit vocations to the priesthood and the religious life. So I know that'll be a top priority because it's such a great need.
Of course. Are you hopeful about that in terms of being able to recruit?
Yes. In fact, we're seeing positive signs already this year.
Well, that's good.
For next year, I think we have 5 new young men signing up for next year's seminary. So,
where do you send them for their seminary training?
We send them to several places, to Mundelein in Chicago.
St. Mary of the Lake.
St. Mary of the Lake, yeah. Mundelein to Josephinum. There's 1 or 2 students there. And also we may be sending some to St. Francis in Milwaukee. Might be sending 1 or 2 there. So, St. Meinrad. So the seminary is kind of in the area here.
Are you finding the vocations are more non-traditional than traditional in terms of age?
Well, that was true for a few years, but now it seems to be the younger men are getting more interested. So those things kind of go in waves. You know, you're never sure where they're going to come from.
Interesting.
As the Lord calls, that's when they answer. You know,
that is good. Are there particular challenges that you found when you came here that sort of surprised you? You know, that you hadn't anticipated? I mean, you've served as the bishop of a diocese with a lot of square miles in it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
in Wyoming, as you know, I had the whole state, so that was about 100,000 square miles. Here, there's only 10,000 square miles. But there's 350,000 Catholics here, and there were only 50,000 there. So that's been, I'm always constantly surprised about the volume of the number of parishes and Catholics to take care of. But I'm finding that a great joy. I keep saying I'm in Catholic Disneyland.
Yeah.
Because there's so many wonderful things happening here.
Well, someone once pointed out to us recently, actually about 6 or 8 months ago, that Brown County is the most Catholic county per capita of any county in the United States.
Wow.
I
no
find
wonder.
that amazing.
I didn't quite realize that, but that's
and
good.
to some extent explains why, for example, one of the Norbertines, Father Cornell, was 2 terms, I think, in the U.S. Congress.
Oh, yeah.
And
okay,
he came, of course, representing this area. So
Uh-huh,
very
sure.
interesting. But it's a very Catholic area, and you're quite right. It's very very densely Catholic.
Yes, very
sense.
densely
And
Catholic,
so
yeah.
I'm sure that did surprise you. Any other challenges that you sort of...
So that was a big challenge. Also, I was a little surprised to see the number of closure of parishes.
Nice.
And that I understand because there was a parish about every 7 to 10 miles.
Sure.
So there probably were too many parishes. But I think hopefully in the next few years we can kind of put a stop to that and start to save our parishes as much as possible.
Wherever that happens, that's painful.
It's painful,
because
yeah,
people
very
grow
painful.
up in those parishes.
Exactly.
They're baptized, they're confirmed,
Their
their
family
first
history,
communion, they're married
yes,
there.
exactly
And,
so.
and as necessary as it is, it's got to be awful for
Right.
the people.
And if we can really recruit more vocations to priesthood and religious life, we'll have less challenges from that point of view.
And that'll
There'll
be
other
very
challenges,
positive.
Yeah. Right.
Now, were there particular experiences that you had in Cheyenne as the bishop of an entire state that
Yeah.
you could bring with you to this position?
Well, you know, I think you kind of bring with you whatever your experience has been. Being a bishop for the first time, there are 3 areas they talk about, governing, sanctifying, and teaching. And those 3 areas for a bishop, that's the 3 parts of his job description, really. So I had a great introduction to all those areas, and I learned an awful lot. There we had to be very innovative and creative from the point of view the Catholic population was only about 10% of the state.
Yes.
So we had to do a lot of outreach, a lot of catechesis, explanation of the church, and people were very grateful and kind about it, but there just wasn't that Catholic population, so
Now,
it was challenging.
on a very pragmatic level, how did you cover 100,000 square miles? How did you do that?
It spent a lot of time in the car. I drove myself in those days. I hear one of the good deacons takes me around, which is really nice. But there I drove myself usually, except for confirmations. But for confirmations, I usually had about 20 to 25 a year. And I'd go out on the road for 10 days and do the confirmation,
My
visit
goodness.
with people in the parish. Then I'd come back after 10 days out on the road, get my laundry done, catch up in the office, and head out again for the next trek. So
My goodness. And you did all the driving yourself?
most all of it, yeah.
Did you ever calculate what mileage you put on your cars?
Oh, about usually about 45 to 25 to 30 a year minimum. Usually about 35. So,
Wow.
yeah,
You're probably glad to be in an area where it's more
Yeah.
densely populated.
yeah. The nice thing, Mike, is I get home and I'm in my own bed every night.
That's
really nice.
I'm
yeah.
sure that is.
Yeah,
I'm sure
it's
that is.
great.
Now, one of the many responsibilities that you have, and your list of accomplishments is impressive, only a few of which I listed on the opening credits. But one of your many responsibilities was serving as the past president of the National Catholic Rural Life Conference, which I think is interesting.
Yes.
What are some of the issues that conference has had to deal with, and particularly during your term as president, that might be noteworthy?
We were talking a lot about the loss of the family farm and what a devastating effect that was on the family, which is such an important Catholic value and Christian value. And we were trying to find ways to help people adjust to the economic climate and also to recognize how to maybe help one another. So there was a lot of cooperation and collaboration among farmers and the church, and we were trying to find ways to help dioceses to respond to that issue in their area. And here, where we have so many farmers, I'm sure that it's a challenge here too. So
It's huge. How realistic do you think it is to sort of hold forth that idea of the family farm in the day of large agribusiness and all the other economic pressures? I mean, is it something that's really practical?
Well, I think the agribusiness is the kind of the cutting edge of today. However, I've certainly seen some literature recently that says with all the greening of America in the sense of being truly climate friendly and treasuring the land, there may be a return to the smaller farm and to do it differently than we have in the past. So I think that remains to be seen. But certainly, hopefully we can transfer some of those same family values and not lose those wonderful gifts to the culture.
Well, I would concur that it's a big issue here, in this
yes,
region,
yeah.
something that certainly deserves to be discussed.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about, since we are a Catholic college and you are the bishop of this diocese, and What do you see as the ideal relationship between the bishop of the diocese and a Catholic college or Catholic colleges and universities in the diocese? How do you see that working itself out in the best possible way?
What's interesting, you mentioned that, Mike. I just had lunch with President Conkle and Father Jay and my vicar, my director of communications, Deacon Riley. And we were talking about how Bishop Zubik, my predecessor, had really worked on building a strong covenant, and you mentioned that when I first came to
Yes, he did. That was a way he approached it. And
I think that's beautiful to have that partnership and sort of a covenant relationship where we talk about issues and we work through challenges and we try to serve the community in a very wholesome way.
Yeah, I think his point, and I hope it'll be your point too, is that we're really in this together.
Exactly.
That we're partners in the educational enterprise.
Yes.
And that the bishop and the faculty and the administration are really involved in trying to, present Catholic teaching, in its authentic way.
Yes,
and
yes.
that doesn't mean it's not up for discussion. Doesn't mean that we can't have different points of view. It means that we present it authentically within that context.
Yes, yes.
And I thought that the Bishop Zubik, I think, had a very good dialogue going with all of us, and we're looking forward, I think, to continuing that dialogue, because I think it's crucial to have that good relationship between the two.
We know Pope Benedict, when he was a theologian and then head of the Doctrine of the Faith congregation in Rome, he did a lot of writing on the role of the theologian, for example, and he talked about a creative fidelity, that we're called to be faithful to the teaching of the Church, to pass it on, but to do it in a way that speaks to the people of our day and their issues and their concerns.
Right.
And how can we get the two worlds to understand and speak to one another?
To work together.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to those conversations, and the meals will go with them, by the way.
Well, thank you.
It's always
very good food.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Now, when we talk about that, is it possible you'll have an increasing presence on the campus in the future? Maybe here and Silver Lake. We should also, of course, mention Silver Lake as the other Catholic institution.
Right. I just spent one day last week at Silver Lake. I've been here a couple times already on the campus and celebrated Mass here with the young people. It's really beautiful. And I enjoyed that so much. I enjoy being with young adults and college-age students. So, yeah, I'm hoping to be here, fairly often. I kind of have a lot of territory to cover, but certainly I want to be present as much as I can.
Well, you're always welcome here, and we
Thank
sincerely
you.
hope that you'll enter into our teaching mission, too, at some point.
Wonderful, yeah. And I feel
a nice relationship.
I feel that welcome, too.
Good,
And
good.
I enjoy teaching, too, a little.
Good.
So.
Now, one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I think it's particularly germane to us, recently one of the former bishops of Green Bay, Bishop Wisislo, passed away. And he was actually one of, I think, the only U.S. bishops still alive who had been at Vatican II. And unfortunately, we never got a chance to have that conversation. I was looking forward to it because I wanted to get his take on it. But a lot of people look at Vatican II, and they talk about the fact that a lot of its promise has never really been completely fulfilled. In some cases, never fulfilled. Depends on the issue. But how do you look back on Vatican II and the contemporary Church?
I think that Vatican II has been a great gift, and certainly our last two pontiffs have considered their mission to implement Vatican II. John Paul was constantly working at implementing Vatican II, and so is Benedict. I think it's going to take 100 years.
Really?
Really, I think so. So I think we've just really begun. And historically, that's usually how long it takes to really implement a council till it's part of the fabric of the whole church,
I'd like to follow up on that if I could, but before I wanted to just remind our viewers that you're watching Conversations from St. Norbert College, and our very special guest this evening is Bishop David Ricken, Bishop of the Green Bay Catholic Diocese, and we're discussing his major agenda items for the next few years. Going back to Vatican II for just a minute, I wanted to ask you a little bit about what are some of the promises of Vatican II that you personally think should be implemented that really haven't been implemented?
Well, I think we've begun almost all the areas. For example, the church in the modern world.
Yes.
The church is constantly trying to find ways to bring the message forward, and that's always a kind of a juggling act because things change and you have to sort of revise how you present something. The social justice teaching of the church. We have the largest body of social justice teaching of any organization in the world, and we've only begun to read and study that, let alone implement it. So that's all kind of a fruit of the Second Vatican Council. Yes. The change of the liturgy, that's been a big adjustment, and we're still going through some of those little adjustments. The Holy Father's trying to find a way to make a continuity with the past and not lose the past, and still at the same time preserve the beauties and the integrity of the liturgy which goes back to the time of Jesus and to that Holy Thursday night, you know.
Well, that's interesting that you take the position. 100 years, you say. And a lot of people looked at Vatican II as opening the windows, you know.
Exactly.
And what you're saying is they're still open.
They're still open. And it's going to be continuous development, I think, and hard work. But a lot of grace, too, you know. So.
One of the legacies of your time in the Cheyenne Diocese was the formation of a brand new Catholic college, which doesn't happen very often these days. No. Could you tell us something about that, how it got started and how well it's doing? It's in its, I think you told me it's
in its second year already. Okay. And Mike, I didn't go to Wyoming with the idea of starting a college, that's for sure. Yeah. But you know what happened was I was concerned about the young adults, that they didn't know their faith very well or couldn't explain it. And I was hearing them ask me questions and how come I didn't know this and those sorts of things. So we started a Wyoming School of Catholic Thought, and that was in Casper, Wyoming, up on Casper Mountain. And it was for young adults in particular. So I had speakers from all over the country come. And I said something at my very last talk during that time. I said, you know, we're bringing all these speakers from around the country, and because we don't have a Catholic college or Catholic university in Wyoming. Then I said, yet. And when I said the word yet, all these young people afterwards came up and said, Bishop, we got to have a Catholic college here. So we only have 6 Catholic grade schools there and no Catholic high schools. None. And so, you know, I said, well, you know, we don't have the resources to do that. We probably can't do that. And then come to find out, Dr. Carlson really kind of had a dream of his to start a Catholic college. Father Bob Cook was very, very talented, and he became the president. So, but we worked at it for 4 years of planning, consultation, you know, budgeting, and trying to do fundraising, and the Lord just blessed it. And I said, let's describe it in the paper, in our diocesan paper, and let's see if anybody will give us land. And I thought, well, this is a sign. If we get the land, we go forward. If we don't get the land, free of charge, I said. So, of course. Of course. So we put it in the paper, and 47 people responded.
Really?
And seven of them wanted to gift us with the land. The rest wanted to charge us a reduced rate. Right. So, and on the last day, we found the perfect piece of property, right in the middle of Wyoming, right across from this most beautiful red valley, and plenty of water, close to electricity, access, and it's 650 acres.
Holy
total gift, a beautiful place. So, so they're at the parish now, and they're starting there. The parish was so generous in offering the church and the school, which was just a religious education center.
And that's where the college is.
That's where the college is.
But the intent is to build new buildings.
Yeah, eventually. We're trying to raise the money now through the Genesis.
How many students are enrolled?
There's 70, I think.
70.
So they can take about 35 a year.
Really?
And they have this National Outdoor Leadership School, which is a world-renowned institute there in Lander, Wyoming, where the college is. And the students start the first 3 weeks in an outward-bound type of experience, out in the wilderness, surviving together. We call it learning in the book of nature. So they're out there together, and they bond together beautifully.
That is interesting. So now that can go 4 years? It's a
4 years. It's 4 years, yes.
Interesting. So
Liberal Arts, great books program with also the good books thrown in. So
very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's going to do well. I hope so.
Well, just returning to that other question about the relationship between the bishop and a Catholic college, because again, there are many different models of this across the country. Obviously,
Sure,
from the Jesuit-run institutions, to the ones that are run by a diocese, to the ones that are independent. It's often been said that the Catholic college is the place where the Catholic Church does its thinking. Is that something that you would subscribe to? That's where the thinking goes on?
Absolutely. I think I went to the seminary in the American College in Louvain, and they said, but you can't think from a dry eraser or a dry board. You have to have some content. So I think that's the first challenge and the first objective. And then later on to be able to reflect on it, and to make it your own, and to understand it, to ask questions, to ponder. And those things, that's all part of the learning process and all part of the growth in truth and in faith. So I think that's a major project. And an education that's really engaged in that way stays with you.
Yes.
Because when you have to defend or explain something, you know it much better usually.
Than yourself. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Now, all of us, we talked earlier about what all of us would hope for more vocations to the religious life, and I think you said you were hopeful about this. But are there particular steps that you think ought to be taken to really encourage more vocations? Because, it's a constant, it's been a problem for a long time, obviously. And what alternatives, if we're not successful at attracting sufficient vocations, what are some of the alternatives that, in addition to the ones we already have, that you might envision?
I think I think the best foundation to build vocation work on is mission. That each person who's here on the earth has a mission. They're here for a reason. And part of our job as church is to help them to understand, each person understand, what is my mission and purpose? Why am I here? Why did God create me, in other words? And once you help them begin that journey, some of them will answer the call to priesthood, some to religious life, and others to marriage and other professions. And so beginning that journey, it's not easy work, but it's a very, very important thing. So I think helping our young people to do that and to use their lives well while they're here, before they die. So
that would lead automatically, you think, to more success.
I think so.
Well, if that's the positive scenario, let's take the other scenario, though, where, we might not have as many vocations as any bishop would need to make the diocese flourish. What are some of the alternatives in addition to...
I think in a way it's been a blessing because we've seen how many capable lay people and deacons there are who are serving in the church, and that's impressive here. They don't take the place of priests, but they certainly supplement and from their own vocation the church of the ministry of the church in a beautiful way. So I think that wouldn't be possible without Vatican II and the role of the laity in the modern world today. All that's a fruit of Vatican II, and we see that in our parishes. So I think I believe in a full complementarity of ministries, not where one is excluded or one is put down or whatever, but where we have the fullness of ministerial engagement in each parish as much as possible.
Do you ever see? We obviously have some married priests, those who are maybe Episcopalians who converted and then were married at the time. Do you ever see a married clergy in the future that is making celibacy an option, not necessarily a requirement? Is that something that you think is possible in the future?
Celibacy is a discipline of the church, and oddly enough, it became a popular movement in Spain first in the 4th century.
Yes.
And then it was made legal made a requirement in the 12th century in the Lateran Council. I suppose as a church discipline, it could change. It's not of divine
it's not a matter of doctrine.
Not a matter of doctrine in that sense. But I think the church has seemed to keep promoting that as the main way to promote the priesthood and to call only those who have that charism. If you put it in that way, that puts it in a little more positive way. Only those who have that charism or can ask for that charism to be ordained to the priesthood. So I don't know. That remains to be seen, I suppose. But certainly there are challenges to all of those ways of life, and I think the church seems to be pretty wedded and destined to the celibate clergy.
Yeah, that seems to be the case. I'm just wondering if that's realistic, and I guess the future will hold the answer.
The answer, yeah. I'm
how
sure
realistic is
that's
it?
Right. Yes, exactly.
Now, you can never predict the future, obviously, but are there some areas, do you think, non-doctrinal areas now, that in the church's operations that might change in the foreseeable future? Things that are, again, not tied to doctrine. We talked about one of them. That's the possibility of a married clergy, which isn't doctrine. It's custom. Are there other areas you think that might go under some change at all in the future?
Well, I know it's kind of hard to say, but I think the thrust toward evangelization and really reaching out with the good news of the Scriptures and the teaching of the church and the communion of the church, I think that will kind of naturally, the church was always good at kind of adjusting and adapting to the different cultures it presents herself to. And I think that'll always keep us on our toes. We'll always be, thinking about how we can best get the message across and how we can enculturate with this particular people and still remain faithful to the church's identity and teaching. Yeah.
One of the challenges, of course, the American church has, which is obviously a challenge of the Vatican, is being able to have replacements for bishops who leave for other assignments and so on, and do it in a timely fashion. We seem to have a long gap between the departure and the appointment. And,
exactly.
And it may be there's not. I don't know what all the issues are, obviously, but the process seems overly elaborate and overly time-consuming. I know it's a careful process. I understand that. Yeah. But you think it'd be quicker that we seem to hire NFL coaches quicker, for sure. And I wouldn't say elect new presidents. That takes 2 years. But
yeah, I worked in the Vatican for 4 years, and their way of thinking about work is entirely different. Work is not the center of everything. Productivity is not their way of thinking. They allow time for the Spirit to work too, and
Yes.
and they do it on a certain pace, and they don't rush it. They don't like to rush things. It is a bit of a question in my mind when you know a bishop's going to retire at the age of 75.
Why aren't you ahead of the game?
I never asked that question.
Right.
I figured maybe I didn't want to know. But anyway, they just have a totally different, and they're taking care of the whole world too. So,
Surely.
And doing so with a very modest staff. I mean, there's very few people who are actually full-time engaged working in there. It's not a huge bureaucracy, even though it may seem like it. It's very small, really.
Well, since you've worked in Rome and being able to get that point of view, do you think they are somewhat puzzled by the American Catholic Church sometimes, seeing the way in which the American Church operates as somewhat maybe troublesome, but also confusing to them?
Yeah, I wouldn't say confusing. They kind of consider us in the continuum from zero when Christ was born to 2000. They consider us kind of in the adolescent phase of our church history because they have a lot of years.
Well, of course.
But on the other hand, they admire us tremendously. We're one of the most vibrant churches in the whole world.
Yes.
They have great respect for the Church in the United States and for the struggles we go through and try to go through with a lot of integrity. So, I think it's kind of a little bit of a tension, of course, because we're just different cultures.
I think it's a healthy tension.
But it is. I think it is. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing.
Very
That's why I
much
was
so.
probing
very
it. But
much so. Yeah.
they must be somewhat amused at times, too.
And they don't understand why we have to have things done right away. Why do we need to do that for?
What's the rush?
What's the rush?
Exactly.
Different mentality.
One of the things I'd be curious about, I think the viewers might be as well, is now, a job like yours is all-consuming, so there must be things that you do to relax and to what is your leisure like? What are things that you pursue in your own leisure that give you some balance?
Yeah. I can't wait for the spring to come and I can get out and walk. I enjoy walking and, enjoying nature, spending time out in nature in the woods or in the mountains. And I used to go in Wyoming, used to go fly fishing a little bit. I was just learning that and I loved that. Boy, it was just like you forget about everything. And nature just envelops you. And
There's good fly fishing here.
Is there? Oh, good.
Oh,
Okay,
yes,
good.
yes.
I look forward to
One
doing
of our
that.
faculty members is an expert, as a matter of fact.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, good.
I'll have to introduce you to.
That would be. I'll take some lessons because
Right.
I'm still learning, but I sure enjoyed it being out there a few times that I was. So.
Any other hobbies that?
That's mainly, I read a lot, I go to bookstores, I like to go to movies, things like that. Kind of gets my mind off of what I normally do.
You certainly need that balance.
You do.
Otherwise,
Absolutely.
I would imagine that the position would be awfully difficult.
Yes.
And
I do a lot of praying. I find that prayer solves a lot of problems, and I don't have to get, involved in the thicket of everything. A lot of times, God's the one to answer these questions and the difficulties, and often I'll ask the Lord or the Blessed Mother or the saints or angels to go out ahead of me and take care of problems, and they do. And I'm so grateful for that.
Well, I'm convinced that our discussions with Bishop Zubik, which you're now going to continue, were divinely guided. So I hope we continue with that.
I sure
that
hope
whole,
so too,
It was a good series of discussions. So
That's
I'm looking
great.
forward to continuing
I look forward
those
to
with
it too,
you.
Mike. Yeah, thank you.
I'd like to thank our special guest, Bishop David Ricken, for sharing his expertise with us this evening. So please join us in the future as we continue our exploration of the world of ideas. Until then, I'm Michael Marsden for Conversations from St. Norbert College.